Very welcome back to Kildare Village. A reminder, of course, that you can be with a chance of winning those €250 gift cards from Kildare Village. All you have to do is retweet the stream or leave a comment for us now. Andy and Alan are here, lads. You're both looking a bit dapper this morning.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Jay.
Yeah, well, you've dressed up for us for a change, Andy.
Yeah, usually in my pyjamas.
There you go, especially on the joys of Skype. It's like, why are we only looking up there at you, Andy, this morning? It's like, yeah, well, how are you doing?
Good, thanks, yeah. Excellent.
Everybody's picking their Ireland squads at the moment for the World Cup. Gavin Cumsky is the latest one. There's some debate about the back row. I saw you'd picked one where Jordy Murphy was in ahead of Josh van der Fleer. I'm like, come on.
Well, you see, he covers two positions. I think we need a specialist cover at number 8. Van der Fleer and Dan Levy are, I suppose, specialist 7s.
Yeah.
You've Sean O'Brien obviously there as well.
Does Sean O'Brien not cover your 8?
Yeah, I suppose he does, but you know, you can only pick, I think, combinations, the numbers they pick per area matters as well. They're only going to pick about 5 or 6. I suspect they pick 5, 6 back rows max.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what I went for.
Surely you can't leave Josh van der Fleer out of...
Yeah, well, the way he played against the All Blacks, I think, and I picked the squad in September, and he wasn't in it. And it'll just tell you, Levy and O'Brien were ahead of him. I was picking 2 7s, 2 8s, and 1 6, and then 3 second rows and Tyg Byrne possibly, or being that utility one, or Ian Henderson. So it's a very competitive area.
You pick 1 6 because everybody
Sean
else
O'Brien
can
play 6, Levy can play 6. It's probably easier position to fill. Andy's a good point about.
Is that like self-deprecating because you were 6th? It's like anybody can play 6.
It's not. No, I think it's obviously being a 7. You can play 2 7s, on a team, and we've seen Australia doing it very successfully with Hooper and Pocock. But it's a bit different when you're putting a 6 over as a 7. Now, Peter O'Mahony can go 7, and he has done that for Ireland and Munster before. But it's a little bit different. That 7 role is more specialist. You need someone really quick, and you want them targeting the breakdown and putting massive pressure on the opposition 10 as well. So there's so much talent there. When you think of the injuries that with Levy and with Levy and Sean O'Brien out, and Van der Fleer steps up, and then Jordy Murphy comes onto the bench. Any one of the 4 could start for Ireland, and you wouldn't have any complaints about them. So it's a very strong area for Ireland.
Yeah. Is it just me, Andy, or is the road to Japan basically starting this weekend? That after the November internationals are over and that focus on the All Blacks, everybody now is jockeying for position, because you've got to get some game time in the Six Nations, unless something remarkable happens. And if you don't get game time in the Six Nations, you ain't going to that World Cup. Yeah,
well, and you've got to get game time in the coming weekends in the European games to get into the Six Nations squad, and there's a level of competition within the provincial setups as well, given the kind of breadth of talent we've developed. Chris Farrell would be a prime example, who came back in after injury, 6-7 months out injured, started on Saturday for Munster, got 2 tries. He's 6'4", he can pass, he's an incredibly aggressive and physical runner, he's a great defender, and yet you're looking at who are the 3 guys ahead of him in Henshaw, Ringrose and Aki, and a guy like Chris Farrell's road to Japan is started last Saturday, and he's going to be so hungry to prove what he can do.
Joe Schmidt loves him. We shouldn't that's
but any coach would, Ger, because as Andy said, he can pass. His hands are really good. He's big, strong. He's quick. So his all-round game is very, very, very good. I think that sharpness and that match practice is really important. The guys ahead of him are obviously performing very well. Henshaw's is a real mainstay in the team for the last number of years. And
last November,
Ringrose has been super, and Aki.
Last November, Rassie Rasmus was at a thing, and he made the prediction that when the World Cup quarter-final rolls round, Chris Farrell will be starting. And that was a very interesting kind of prediction from him, given that he's probably going to be coaching the team against them. So he obviously has huge faith in him.
Yeah, I think I remember when Munster were linked with him, and he was in Grenoble, and I spoke to Mike Prendergast a number of occasions, and he kept raving about how good this guy's passing was as well. And the path and the journey he had to go when he left Ulster and he went to France was a brave decision. He's still very young, and he's 6'4". He's the size of a good sized back row, very, very powerful. And but I think he's very humble and quiet guy, and doesn't get ahead of himself. So he knows that the competition ahead of him. And I think, Joe likes him. Any coach would like a guy who's naturally that big and strong and abrasive, and he'll certainly be in the mix. But they've got to try and play in the Six Nations, and that's where you grab the attention.
Yeah.
And
that's why these games are huge.
But also you have to do well, and it's a very valid point that Andy makes about Europe. They're the games that people remember, the standout games. You'll get a bit of a pass in some of the Pro 14 games if you weren't standing out. But in the big games, big players have to stand out, and I think consistency, it's very, very early. Somebody can have a little bit of off form and has performed well for Joe Schmidt before, and that doesn't mean they'll be ruled out if they're not playing really well now. But I think coming towards the back end of the season, you've got to be playing well. And if Munster get a good run, they might get couple of more guys on. Leinster are the ones with the lion's share, and rightly so, of players in the squad. If Munster get a good run in Europe, if Ulster get a run in Europe, get out of their group, that kind of stuff, a big quarter-final win or something, you grab attention, somebody can put up their hand. I thought Will Addison, even with respect to the USA last week, he just looked really, really good, and his lines of running and communication, and just looks like a player that he's one that could force himself into the reckoning come Japan.
Are you prepared for a year of talk about the Rugby World Cup?
I'm actually getting into it now. Yeah. Started dating a girl from Rathgar as well, so it's just it's just logical now. Go. And do you know what's mad? Every time I go into town, I want to see the Man United game the other day, and it was very, very hard to. Everyone had Leinster on. It was really struggling to get a TV that was watching it.
For the Man United Southampton game, this 2 weeks ago.
No, Man United Southampton. So the Leinster were playing at the same time. So you're expecting the Leinster
playing Dragons.
Yeah, but there was nobody. It was even 2 weeks prior to that when the internationals were on.
Yeah.
I think Chelsea were playing Spurs maybe, and it was very, very hard to find anywhere watching it. Dublin is really becoming a rugby city at the moment, and so I just have to embrace this. But I actually, genuinely, watching the Ireland New Zealand game, it was very hard not to get swept away by it. It's great fun.
The only other contentious call that Gavin Cumsky has in his piece this morning is that he's put Andrew Conway in ahead of Will Addison, and actually ahead of Chris Farrell as well. So I think Conway is still a little bit underrated, and yet could actually be a matchday squad player. I think he's going to get ahead of Larmour ultimately in the matchday squad when it comes around to the World Cup.
I disagree on that. Wholeheartedly.
Okay.
Yeah. I think Conway's got a lot of abilities, great footwork. He scored that try, which is probably going to now go down in history as one of the more famous Munster tries at the tail end of the Toulon game last year. However, when you look at the likes of Will Addison, when you look at Chris Farrell, when you look at Jordan Larmour, and all the things we spoke about with the back row forwards, Joe Schmidt can only pick 31 players, and he needs to cover as many eventualities and risks and cover himself for injury. Quinny went to a World Cup in 2003 and dislocated your shoulder didn't you, in that first game. Things can happen very, very quickly, and if you're not covered in terms of the depth of your squad, you're suddenly in trouble with 28 players. Now, Addison covers 4 positions in the back line.
The centre.
Centre, wing and fullback. Both centres, wing and fullback. Farrell covers probably both centres, wing, maybe less so fullback. Conway, in reality, at an international level, is a winger, and that's all.
Is he not a fullback?
I think he's on. Well, I think he's going to look at him as a winger, potentially as a fullback. Obviously, he's played there, but in terms of covering 3 to 4 positions, multiple positions across the back line, if he goes with 3 scrum halves, if he goes with 3 10s, if he goes with 3 centres, he's probably going to go with 5 back 3 players, and those back 3 players need to cover pretty much every position.
When you go up around 26, 27, and you're starting to just close out the squad, I think utility players will. The 50-50 calls will get the benefit of the doubt, But I think we say Joe likes a player. We only know that from him selecting him in big games. He put Andrew Conway on the bench a couple of years ago against England. He came off the bench, and he's had him involved for a while. He's been a little bit unlucky with a few injuries on occasions. He went to Australia, got injured after scoring that try in the second test in Melbourne. When Hale Petty hit him with his knees into the hip, and it was so unlucky for him, because I really thought it was a great opportunity for him to really kind of have that confidence playing in the Irish jersey. He's never got a massive run. he looked so sharp last week, and again in the weekend for Munster against the USA game and at the weekend. So maybe that ability to, he can cover wing and full back very well, and he's very good under the high ball. He's not the tallest guy in the world, but I think Will Allison, you know, it depends how he goes, and it depends how Ulster goes well, Andy, throughout the season. I think it's very early to be, you know, going in depth in it, because a lot can happen. But it's a good place that he's in, that he has a lot of guys who can. Look at Tadhg Byrne, the way he can play back row, second row. Henderson can do the same. That's probably going to come against one of the back rowers.
Yeah.
I went to the World Cup, the 03 one. I went in that role possibly of covering second row and back row as well. And it helped me to get in ahead of David Wallace.
Who were your rivals for the six jersey?
Well, David Wallace was, Wally stayed at home. Simon Easterby and myself were kind of deemed as 6. Victor Costello and Axel were the 8s, and then Keith Leeson was the 7. So Wally kind of lost out, because I could have covered 7, which I played against Argentina as well as a 7, but also there was only 3 second rows there as well. So that's where I think, you know, Tadhg Byrne could be a real option, and he could push someone out of that back row position, and the same way Addison could as well. But he's got to play well for Ulster as well, because I think Conway at the moment, I think first and foremost, he'll, rather than going too much into the flexibility or the ability to play in different positions, he'll try and factor guys in their own positions and how they're playing. And then, as I say, when you get up to 26, 27, you might be going, look, there's 2 guys here for one position.
And we're assuming everybody's fit at the moment.
I think John,
it's a weird situation at the moment where there's.
But I think John Cooney could be that ability to cover a couple of positions might help John Cooney. Does he bring 3 scrum halves, 3 fly halves, or does he just bring 5 there? I don't think he's going to bring 6. We went to the last World Cup with only 2 scrum halves, but you're across the water, you can fly someone across quickly if somebody gets injured. John Cooney can place kick, and he could possibly slot in against a Russia or a Japan as a 10. You know, if you took a player off, he could do 20 minutes, half an hour there easily. So that might help him over, you know, Marmion or Luke McGrath, which is, it's a good place to be, and I think that's the key area.
There's a question about that actually. Conor Lynchy wants to know, what does Luke McGrath need to do to make the World Cup squad? Heineken Cup winner, second fiddle to a very good Connacht player. I think Marmion obviously was brilliant in the November series, but played on that injury and needed surgery afterwards, and it's going to be right up against the Six Nations before he gets back. So it's going to work against him. Like, the last thing he's done is going to be very good in the mind of the selection committee when they sit down, / Joe Schmidt. And but he's not going to be fit again really until the start of the Six Nations. So it's very hard for him to get back in the squad.
I took a bit of grief online recently for comments about Marmion in the autumn internationals, and I have no anti-Connacht sentiment. I played for them was my response.
Well, that might be why you're against them.
No, but he. While every man, like to a man against New Zealand, was heroic, in terms of technically what he did with his box kicks, they weren't probably up to scratch. They were very shallow, and a lot of them were inaccurate and infield. And on another day, I think we could have been really sorely punished. We got away with it. And then you're down to, if his box kicking game isn't that strong or consistent, is his passing that much better or different to Luke McGrath? And then if it's close or par on that, you look at their running game and their contribution around the field, and in that case I think Luke McGrath probably edges it. Then if you talk about Schmidt going with 3 scrum halves and 3 10s, if he does that, because he didn't do it for the last World Cup, we need cover as place kickers as well. If Sexton was to get an injury, if Cooney would only be involved if Murray was injured, but Murray is also a backup kicker, so you have to consider combinations, permutations. I actually think a year out, it's not outlandish to suggest he would go with Conor Murray, Luke McGrath, and actually Cooney as a third backup.
That's exactly what Comiskey had in his selection today. Neil Keegan, sorry, this one here. Back row isn't an easy pick. 2 specialists, and the other 2 perceived fringe players can cover 7 and 8. It's not a bad position to be in, but let's win the Six Nations before we pick Rugby World Cup squads.
What is the Six Nations? That's what intrigues me now. Is it almost like the league in Gaelic games, where the championship is the World Cup and the Six Nations this year is the league? 1 year
out of 4, I think it feels a little bit like that. Because like, if you win the Grand Slam and don't get out of your group, who cares about that Grand Slam?
Yeah.
You get like, there'll be a short celebration after. I don't know. You played and tried to win Grand Slams for your entire career, so maybe you feel differently about it.
It's a little bit different, but I think the Six Nations, you know, as a player going into Six Nations, you're still you still have that feeling that you're playing for an opportunity every time, even the fellas on the team. So I don't think they'll drop their standards. I think we as the public and maybe in the media will probably go, look, we are bothered, but not as bothered as normal years. I think for this team to they're positioned well to challenge for another Grand Slam. You think they've England at home first up. They're away in Scotland then the week after, which is a very daunting task, and I think the Scots will be rubbing their hands together for that one.
We owe them from the last time.
Well, we saw what happened there 2 years ago and stuff like that. So
they made our bus be late, didn't they?
They've got to manoeuvre their way. They've got to manoeuvre their way through the Six Nations. And does he rotate the squad a little bit? I think he has an ability now to make some changes within the group, which is really important. I don't think he'll devalue it in any way, Joe Schmidt, because if they win another Grand Slam or win a championship, it's very hard to win a Grand Slam, and history has shown us that for any team. We don't really, it's hard to back it up. So I think to be challenging for a championship, going to Cardiff in the last weekend will be a good place. If they lose a game, is it the worst thing in the world? I don't think it is. It might recalibrate them, if you like. But the other side of it then is if they do continue winning is a real kind of culture, and it's a real part of mentality. And I think this group now a lot of them have won and lost together a lot over the years. And I think they're very, very mature. They'll realise that, look, winning a Grand Slam, but you can't look too far ahead. They've got to look at just the English game. And all those guys, their focus will solely be on Leinster, Ulster, Connacht, Munster this weekend.
Yeah.
So it's, it is a little bit different. There's no doubt about it. But you saw what England did in 2003 when they won the Grand Slam. They beat us in Dublin 43-6 or something.
They rolled that on into the World Cup.
We were challenging for, it was a Grand Slam decider, and then they continued it on to tour in
You are
New Zealand.